Chapter 17, the endocrine system, screencast 4, the thyroid. Now, this screencast will be focusing on the thyroid, and when we look at the thyroid here, we can see that it is just inferior to the larynx, and it's always described as bilobed, and you might often hear it referred to as a butterfly. And from the anterior portion, we are actually seeing the thyroid. The posterior, we would actually be looking at the parathyroid. Now here, this is the histology of the thyroid, and it's very distinctive. For example, on the lab quiz, you'll be responsible for identifying this as thyroid tissue. You're not responsible for identifying the individual cells or any of that. But keep in mind, when we talk about thyroid cells, they look very much like this. They're very distinctive. Now, the other thing to remember here is when we're talking about thyroid hormone, remember that was the exception to one of the rules. And even though it is a biologic amine, it falls under the category of lipid-soluble hormones. Now, there is a relationship between the hypothalamus and the pituitary and the thyroid. And what we're going to see basically things such as cold temperature, pregnancy, high altitude, hypoglycemia, or low thyroid hormone will cause the hypothalamus to release thyroid release hormone. In turn, this tells the anteropituitary to release thyroid stimulating hormone. Thyroid stimulating hormone in turn binds to receptors of follicular cells, and that is going to trigger the release of thyroid hormone. Now, the follicular cells will be releasing one of two forms of thyroid hormone into the blood, and those could be T3 or T4. The thing that I want you to remember here is T3 is going to be the most active form. Now, the other thing to remember here is as thyroid hormone, T3 or T4, are being transported in the blood, as they are lipid soluble, they must be carried by protein molecules since thyroid hormone is not water soluble. Now here we're basically looking at the regulation and action of thyroid hormone. We've addressed some of these stimulus, and these could be blood levels of thyroid hormone, cold weather, pregnancy, high altitude, low blood glucose. Those are all factors. The receptor is going to be the hypothalamus, and the control center, once again, will be the hypothalamus, and it's going to result in the release of thyrotropin-releasing hormone. That moves on to the anteropituitary, and the anteropituitary in turn will release thyroid stimulating hormone. The target now is going to be the thyroid, and thyroid stimulating hormone is going to stimulate the thyroid to release thyroid hormone. This could be T3 or T4 into the blood, and now thyroid hormone will move through the body via a protein carrier and exert its impact over the body. Now, the general impact of thyroid hormone is to increase metabolic rate and the release of nutrients into the blood. So here we can basically look at amino acids, glucose, okay, kind of going into cells, okay, but also notice glucose is going from the liver into the blood. And so keep in mind, we have to see the glucose moving and amino acids going into the cells to support the increase in metabolic rate that will be associated with thyroid hormone. We're going to see adipose tissue broken down. This is going to result in more lipolysis and a decrease in lipogenesis. If we look at targets such as the heart and the lungs, we're basically going to see either an increase in heart rate or force of contraction, or we're actually going to see a higher rate of ventilation. And so this is due to meet the increased oxygen demand for aerobic cellular respiration that's happening because of the increased metabolic rate. Now, the two primary conditions that are most associated with the thyroid are either hyperthyroidism. This is going to be too much thyroid hormone being produced. This results in significant increases in metabolic rate. We're going to see very major weight loss, hyperactivity, and individuals that don't tolerate the heat really well. Now, this could be caused by the ingestion of T4. There could be excessive stimulation by the pituitary, or there actually could be the loss of a feedback control mechanism, and this would be Graves' disease. The treatment for hyperthyroidism is removing the thyroid. Then moving forward, this individual will have to be given hormone supplements since they no longer will be producing thyroid hormone. The opposite is going to be hypothyroidism. So this is a decrease in the production of thyroid hormone. This will result in a lower metabolic rate, lethargy, intolerance of the cold, and weight gain. This could be caused by a decrease in the intake of iodine. It could be the loss of pituitary stimulation of the thyroid. Could be a post-surgical result. It could be the immune system destroying the thyroid. But the bottom line here is individuals that have hypothyroid, they will be treated with thyroid hormone replacement. And now here we're basically looking at goiter. This is an enlargement of the thyroid, and this is due to the fact that there is not enough dietary iodine. Now, iodine is extremely necessary to produce thyroid hormone. So what's happening here is because there's not enough iodine, it's going to prevent the thyroid from producing thyroid hormone. The thyroid pretty much goes into overdrive trying to produce thyroid hormone, but there is no iodine, so it's going to continue, and the result is this large goiter. Typically, this is not something we see in the United States anymore, and that is due to the fact that our salt, our common table salt, is actually iodized. Now, keep in mind, not all salt currently is iodized. There are a number of gourmet salts, such as pink Himalayan salt. Most of those gourmet salts are not iodized. Now, if we look at calcitonin, this is actually synthesized and released from the parafollicular cells or the parathyroid. This will result in, the stimulus is high blood calcium or stress from exercise. And what calcitonin is going to do, it's actually going to decrease the level of calcium in our blood. It's going to accomplish this in one of two ways. It's going to inhibit osteoclast activity. And remember, osteoclasts are those bone cells that are responsible for breaking down calcium in our bone and releasing it into the bloodstream. It's also going to tell the kidneys to increase the excretion of calcium in our urine.